This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
To majorly blame a low tax base on tax evasion and avoidance, which is our case in this particular debate. That is why we are talking about the major one in this case, which is majorly blaming tax evasion and avoidance, whereby the case of Team Negative clearly engulfs in ours, whereby we come and talk about number one. We tell you that we are actually supporting tax evasion and avoidance as a major cause of our low tax base, simply because it has reduced tax revenue. Secondly, we are actually saying that it has shifted the tax burden to other taxpayers. Now, take a look at what Team Negative comes and brings on this podium. Number one, they're coming to tell us that it actually leads to inefficiency in tax collection. Ladies and gentlemen, by the fact they talk about this particular argument, they are actually talking about it under this tax evasion and avoidance. We come and say that number one, tax evasion and avoidance, tax evasion and avoidance, number one, leads to reduced tax revenue, because we are actually saying that once we are looking at such illegal activities such as smuggling, such as people refusing to pay tax, we are actually going to look at a low tax base, which is actually the major problem in this particular debate. They come and talk about how utilizing the loopholes in the tax system is actually helping them to actually withdraw the low tax base. But at the end of it all, we are actually saying as Team Affirmative that Team Negative actually talks about their cases under our main burden in this particular debate, which is tax evasion and avoidance. They come and talk about how it has actually led to inefficiency in tax collection. We are saying that as Team Affirmative, that actually they do not know what they're talking about. Now, number two, they come and say that what? Corruption is taking place because that, yes, please.
If there were strong laws against tax evasion in status quo currently, do you think there would be still tax evasion that's happening?
Have those laws been put, and has the tax evasion reduced? It hasn't. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on our side of the house, we are actually saying that it actually leads to reduced tax revenue. Number one, because we're actually saying that through tax evasion and avoidance, we are actually seeing that the tax revenue has actually been reduced. They come and talk about how they are giving tax holidays to increase on the tax base. But we are seeing in our particular status quo, where we are saying that 100 of taxpayers are actually paying 70% of this tax. We are saying that tax holidays do not actually apply in this particular case, because to actually reduce more on the tax base. On that particular matter, we wonder whether Team Negative is actually supporting the fact that the tax base should actually be reduced more, simply because by the time the government is giving tax holidays to companies, these companies might have contributed a huge amount of money to the government, whereby a tax holiday would actually be of a huge risk to the economic system of the country. Moving forward, they are actually coming to talk about how the country actually has weak tax laws, which actually support the decrease in the tax base. That is why we are actually blaming the tax evasion and avoidance, which is why the resolution talks about it as a major cause, which has failed to be understood by Team Negative in this particular debate. We are actually talking about how we are actually saying that tax evasion and avoidance actually shifts tax burden to other taxpayers, whereby they come and talk about tax holidays, in which we actually see that once these tax holidays are actually being given to these taxpayers, the tax burden will actually be shifted to the other taxpayers, whereby they won't even manage to pay that tax. In the end goal, we're actually going to see a lower tax base, which Team Negative has failed to prove to us in this particular debate. They again come and talk about how smuggling, which brings in a low tax base, but this smuggling wouldn't have come if there was no tax evasion and avoidance, which is actually our major blame point in this particular debate. They failed to give us clear rebuttals on how they actually refuse to accept that tax evasion and avoidance actually the cause for a low tax base. Henceforth, I remain proud to affirm, and dear judges, I believe that your vote is with Team Affirmative.
The panel of judges, the two antagonistic bodies in the House at large, good afternoon to you all. My name is Namilyango Jeremiah, Team Negative, third speaker. So first and foremost, you realize that Team Affirmative has failed to understand what you are trying to bring about in this debate. What they are trying to bring out is that they are trying to solve the manifestations of tax evasion and tax on things affecting our tax base. But rather, what we as Team Negative are trying to bring out is that we are getting to the root cause of low tax base, which they are failing to understand. What they are trying to bring about is like a person going to solve the disease, going to solve the symptoms of a disease instead of solving the disease itself in order to get well. Now, how does that come into force? We realize that there are some clash points. Is a major clash point which we have had in this debate, which is to show which is the major cause, which is the major blame to put onto this kind of situation of the low tax base. Now, what does Team Affirmative bring to you? Team Affirmative comes and says that they actually bring about tax evasion and tax avoidance as their major, right? And why do they bring it about? They say that it actually brings about different problems like reduced revenue and all that. But we tell you that first and foremost, how do you know that the person has evaded the taxes and has avoided the taxes? You know it because of the laws of and the different policies that have been put in place. That's why we are saying, without these laws, without this legal framework, you cannot be able to know that a person is actually evading taxes. That's why we are saying their whole thing is encompassed in our debate. Another reason as why we are saying that it's actually encompassed on our side of the debate. We show you that even if they are to we show you that it does not actually solve the problem of low tax base in the debate. Why? We see that even when they try to bring in, I said even if, this is an even if factor that I'm bringing, that it does not solve the problem, right? They bring in tax avoidance and tax evasion in the near future.
POI.
You realize, rejected, you realize that it's actually short-term lived, right? It does not provide the long-term benefits in the future, right? You realize that in the future, there are other factors that can lead. As they realize in their first speech, they clearly stated, we are seeing that there are other factors, right? But in this case, a major problem actually entails even the major factors. And how does our side entail the major factors? Our side actually shows you that the weak legal framework of the taxes has problems such as
POI.
allowed?
To remove a weed, do you remove part of it or do you kill the whole plant?
These people are bringing what they are trying to say is, on our side, we are getting to the root cause, which is the weak low legal framework, right? The weak legal framework in this case is bring about the tax evasion that they are saying. How does it bring about the tax evasion? We show you that in order to get those taxes evaded and to know that the person is avoiding taxes, you need to know what rules should I follow, what policy should I do. They need not know that. They do not realize that it's actually all around our debate. They also don't realize that even when they try to solve their problems in the future, there are other factors that are going to storm up and are going to be major problems in the future, such as corruption, such as tax awareness, lack of tax awareness, which is a major problem that can stand again in the near future. But on our side of the house, we actually show you that when you bring in this week with this legal framework and we make it better and we strengthen it, we shall solve those problems, even the other factors such as corruption and the tax awareness. How? We show you that we are going to amend, we're showing you that even in the amendment of laws, these things are going to be taken away and we are going to build a framework which has no loopholes. And without the loopholes, that means that they cannot get in, the people cannot evade the taxes and the people cannot avoid the taxes. Why? Because first of all, we have created incentive for them. As my second speaker clearly elaborated for you, when this is put in place, you are creating incentive. Why? Because we are solving things like corruption. There is more accountability. And when people know why they are putting in the taxes, where the taxes are going, they will be more incentivized to go and put in more money in form of taxes, because they know that the taxes are actually being put to good use by good accountability, which comes on our side of the debate, but not on their side of the debate. They're only solving the thing that is manifesting, not the major problem. And that's why we believe that we have won this debate. Thank you very much.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.